Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast presented by our friends at Northwest Insurance Agency. I'm Billy Embody. We've got a lot to get to with our friend Hayden Howerton right there. We break down SMU's win over Syracuse this past weekend as the Mustangs improved to 3-2, and we go coast to coast across college football. It all starts right now on this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast.
When you clock in every day, there's always that chance that something can happen. You don't know when, where, or how, but accidents are inevitable. As a business owner, you don't want to be left holding the bag whether something happens to an employee or customer. General liability insurance covers everything from a slip or fall all the way down to a paper cut. At Northwest Insurance Agency, we will get you any necessary coverage that pertains to your field. So get covered under the sombrero by calling 855-88-75656 or visit us at nwagencies.com.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody.
1, 2, 3, let we go.
That is right. It is Tuesday night for Hayden Howerton and I, and most of you will listen to this Wednesday morning. Some of you night owls will get it tonight. But Hayden, it is a great time to be back with you because, of course, we're talking about an SMU win. They go 1-0 in ACC play now, and Mark Villasana, our friend at Northwest Insurance Agency, is sure happy about that. 214-352-5656 is where you can reach him, have him go over your insurance rates, coverage, and more, and make sure you're all set up there. You don't want to be worrying about that as SMU gets into the back half of this season. And look, all is well. SMU remains undefeated in ACC play.
And that's all that matters, right? You get back into the win column. You start off ACC play on the right foot. It is hard to win in college football. And I think 2024 spoiled us a little bit to that as people seem to have forgotten of what it was like before the ACC. But it's a huge deal to start off conference play 1-0. And I never want to downplay that. I feel like this team definitely hit a stretch in the second quarter where they looked every part of a top team in the conference that you could see in Charlotte. But there was kind of a bookend lull between the first quarter, the fourth quarter. We'll get to that in my keys to the game. But there were a lot of positives in this game. The penalties were something that looked to be handled as the team only committed 2 all day for 15 yards. It was a perimeter holding penalty and then just jumping off sides. A couple things that are really easy to clean up and just playing hard penalties, as I like to call them. The Boulevard was a zoo. I think Parents Weekend was a success, and it was a great time all around on the Boulevard. So really, really happy for this program to kind of get back to what we were used to last year.
Yeah, and that's, I think, worth noting. And I think 2025, as we've seen kind of all over the place with some of these programs and how they're performing relative to expectations, things are not easy across the country, which will show once again in coast to coast. And I think for SMU to get back out to the 24-3 halftime lead, 31-3 overall going into that last half of the fourth quarter, that was what you wanted to see against a lowly Syracuse team. And speaking of used to, I'm used to great service from our friends at Thomas Auto Group. And make sure you head up 75 in McKinney and visit their 4 dealerships, Ford, Subaru, Volkswagen, and Mitsubishi. They can get you into a new vehicle there or shop their pre-owned selection, and make sure you mention On the Pony Express when you do. That'll get you employee pricing on a new or pre-owned vehicle. ThomasAutoGroup.com is where you can find that. Hayden, keys to the game. This one is always nice when you see a 2 out of 3. That's a passing grade for SMU, and not as much things to gripe about, except really that second half of that fourth quarter in a sense.
Yeah, you got some green on my side versus the 1 out of 3 or 0 for 3 that we've kind of been used to start the year. But first key to the game, I thought we had to keep Kevin Jennings comfortable. Protectionally, I think situationally you needed to. I talked about living in that third and short, third and medium territory after really kind of living in the third and super long against TCU just a few weeks ago. And then I think you only could give up 1 sack just to keep Kevin mobile. He's not looking over his shoulder, and especially with an offensive line unit that I'll get to when we talk about the offense was missing 3 key pieces. SMU's average third down distance on Saturday was only 4.5, huge improvement from that 8.2 they had against TCU, and then only 1 sack given up. So they hit that goal. Second goal I put was that defense must show improvement in the passing game. So less than 300 yards The passing given up to the Orange is what I said it would take to win. They'd given up 14 sacks on the year. We did come away with 2 more to bring their total to 16, and then 279 yards and 3 picks for Ricky Collins. Ouch. And then finally, start fast and finish strong after the bye. Win the first and the fourth quarter. Simple as that. I wouldn't call it a fast start. I know you won the first half for this SMU football team, but offense had 2 straight punts to start the game. You did win the first quarter 3-0, but you lose the fourth quarter 7-15. It just wasn't the same finish as it felt like it was going to be about midway through the third. It was a little lackadaisical from SMU at times. They got up. The team seemed pretty comfortable on the sideline when I don't think the game was out of hands by any means. I mean, you saw the Syracuse guys. They were trying to claw back into the game. You know, Fran Brown, like we talked about last week, does a great job of keeping his guys motivated. So I talked about last week in my article that I'm looking for that killer instinct for this SMU football team. I'm still waiting to see this team's ability to just step on the gas late in the game. And I think this week could be another opportunity for that, but you have to practice it whenever you get the opportunity.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is I think this was the game that really showed me, and not statistically maybe, and this might come off a little weird, I guess, to say this, but the offensive line for SMU is maybe starting to get a little unsung. You know, like they aren't being talked enough about, because if you now kind of look through the first 5 games, yes, you've had some, rough moments. Like the offensive line was a work in progress at times. There's no doubt about it. But you've also been able to run the ball at a pretty high rate for the most part this season. And at the same time, Logan Parr has been banged up. PJ Williams has been banged up. They've kind of had a little bit of rotation going on at left tackle. You mentioned all those changes that we're going to talk more about. The offensive line is one of the best at giving Kevin Jennings time to throw. And that's really important right now as they get into the teeth of this conference play. And we'll talk about it later this week on our preview pod, but Stanford is really good at stopping the run. So they're going to have a tough test again this coming Saturday in Ford Stadium at 11 a.m. But for me, I think this was the game that I at least felt like SMU's offensive line was rather good relative to who was out there on the field. The depth was showing itself. They didn't have to roll out somebody that was overwhelmed and really was a huge weak link out there. Draymond Odoms is learning. That's a thing. He's going to have great plays. He's going to have poor plays. But to go out there and have Nate Anderson out there at left guard and then Savion flip over to right guard or right tackle, I thought it just overall, this was a big game for the offensive line.
And it's hard. You talk about the versatility factor of offensive line. It's something that really is a skill, and not a lot of guys can do it. But you're throwing guys in weird positions. Savion is going left to right. He's a guy that probably 2 springs ago when I was with this team, they talked about this is a left tackle no matter what. And now they've got him rotating all over the field. They've got him doing some tackle over. They've got him playing some right tackle, where it's fun to see that progression that the room has made since my time in there. But you talked about the kind of revolving door of who was in there on Saturday. And this offensive line unit is still a top 10 unit in the country as far as time to pressure. So I saw that stat earlier today. I think they came in going into the Stanford week. I think they're at number 4. 5. Definitely one of the top units.
Tied for 5th. So, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they're tied for 5th.
Yeah. So one of the best units in the ACC. Yeah. So if they can keep that up against, frankly, the better rushers are on our back half of the schedule, we're going to have an opportunity to surprise some people after the first half of the year.
No doubt. And the best way to travel is to surprise your favorite people with a trip with Status Jet. And that's why we want you guys to reach out to them as the holidays are kind of starting to sneak up on us. Just about a month and a half until Thanksgiving. Best way to get out to Cal is through Status Jet. You have your Thanksgiving at home, you jump on the plane Saturday morning, get out to Cal, and Status Jet can have you back, I'm sure, that night, or maybe a red-eye situation late back into Dallas if that's where you're departing from and returning to. Status Jet can do that. Make sure you reach out to David Henry and his team today. Get a discount on a round-trip flight when you mention us on the Pony Express with our friends at Status Jet. Should we jump into the grades for the offense? What'd you think?
I think so. On paper, I think this was a really big day for the offense. I talked about the lull where it kind of seemed like we had kind of kicked our feet up a little bit and just kind of written this one off as we wanted to kind of get out of there. And look, after the bye, it's hard. You feel more out of shape than you were before the bye. So I get it. You're just trying to kind of get past the other side of this game. But Kevin Jennings had one of his best games as a Mustang. 29 for 35, 285 yards, 4 touchdowns, career high for him. He did, of course, have an interception, which he's good for about 1 a week right now, as I know they're continuing to try to coach that out of him. But the career high in touchdowns, the high passer rating, the high completion percentage, and then just the way he's able to influence the defense with his legs, as I'll show in the film room, is unable to be replaced by whoever we had out there on the field. But Ty Hawkins saw some limited action as well. And Billy, I don't know about you, it is a little hard for me to swallow watching Ty play. Only a couple of snaps. I'm hoping they redshirt him, but we're just going to have to wait and see what happens this year. We did see the tight end room get some serious love in this game, which I think we'd all been waiting on this whole season, as RJ Maryland got involved, Matthew Hibner got involved. I think they both had amazing catches that are also on the film room for you guys later. But Savion got the nod again at left tackle, which he was benched in the TCU game. Chambly was unavailable. We talked about Jermod Odoms getting a ton of playing time. And look, guys, Jermod gives up that sack. He is, in my opinion, most of the reason that SMU gives up that safety. And so walking out of the game, I was a little bit disappointed. And then you watch the tape you remember that these are ACC guys that he's playing against, and he actually had some really nice reps on there. Reps that most true freshman offensive tackles would not have in this league. So there's obviously a lot for him to clean up. I'm hoping the sack and the safety don't get to his head too much, because my first couple games as a true freshman, I gave up a couple of sacks. I made the adjustment, and then it went 4 years before I gave up the next one. I'm just saying – is able.
Nice.
It is able to be coached on even at a young level, and those plays will be able to influence you throughout the rest of your career. So the running offense, we talk about how good this offensive line unit is. It just didn't show up on paper from a rushing standpoint. You only have 28 rushes, 76 yards. I know there's a lot of those little bubble screens that you have to throw when Syracuse is loading the box. They're trying to take away that run game from SMU. And hey, look, if those bubble screens are there, I've got no problem with throwing it out there. It's hard to get a rhythm going in that case. And I think a third of those runs, or a third of those yards, were on that TJ Harden run where he ran into the back of the left guard and just bounced it outside for 25 or 30 yards. So you take away the slow start, you take away the poor finish, and overall, this was a pretty efficient day for the offense. So I'm going to give him a B- only because of the 7 points in the second half I think is unacceptable for an offense of this caliber. But overall, from an execution standpoint, I think it was pretty good.
Well, and I think, too, another thing that stood out to me is you get the ball, I think, the first drive of the second half, and you cook 6 minutes off of it. And I think that's where the missed field goal came in. And so, we'll got that special teams grade here in a bit too. But when you do that and you get nothing, I feel like that kind of gives you, like, all of a sudden the game is shrunk. Like Syracuse gets the ball out of half. They don't do anything with it. Shout out the defense doing their thing. But when you have a drive that goes that long and it takes up half a quarter and then you get nothing, all of a sudden it's late in the third quarter. And then by the time SMU got the ball again, I'm pretty sure it was the fourth, or it wasn't the fourth, but it ended up being the fourth when they scored. Like, it's just one of those things where the second half was weird from a rhythm, from a flow. A ton of people mentioned on Twitter, all of the defensive injuries that Syracuse was having. Like, this game just felt choppy as all get out.
It was definitely broken up with the TV timeouts. I know what you're talking about with the injuries. And I don't ever want to accuse people of it being fake. But when you run to the ball, you stand around, you look at the sideline, and then you go down to the cramp. Like, I know it was hot, and these upstate New York guys were used to the mid-60s last week. But it definitely seemed like a way that Syracuse was going to slow this game down. They were going to try to throw our offense off its rhythm. And to their point, I think it worked a little bit,
Yep.
which is tough to see because that's supposed to be a penalty. That's not supposed to be in college football anymore. You know, if the referees think it's egregious, they're supposed to throw an unsportsmanlike conduct on the defense. So I was a little bothered by that. I was bothered the officials didn't take some action, but ultimately, at the end of the day, the only thing that SMU can control is themselves. So if the penalties aren't going to get called, you're still going to have to execute no matter what the defense is doing.
Yep. And look, speaking of control, I mean, you're going to want to control where you eat after an SMU game, and it's 11 a.m. on Saturday. So this is the perfect opportunity to make dinner reservations at Mignon in Plano. Nick Nator, former SMU offensive lineman, friend of the show. He and his family have been cooking up great meals in Plano for years and years and years now at Mignon. And when the Mustangs win on Sunday, you get free dessert when you mention On the Pony Express, whether that be brunch or dinner. So make your reservations on Open Table today. Support Nick Nator and his family. They support us. They're proud Mustangs, and we really appreciate their support. And look, the food is just fantastic. So make sure you head up to Mignon and get after it up there because they have a great spread. And look, the SMU defense, they got after it. You know, there was some busts. There were some things they've got to clean up. But overall, they took care of what is a very poor Syracuse offense without Steve Angeli.
I was worried early in this game, Billy. I mean, it seemed like Syracuse got the first third down conversion. They got rolling a little bit. They drive it all the way down, and SMU makes a goal line stand when Syracuse had a 1st and 7. Syracuse was 6 for 16 on third down, and their average distance on third down was 7.7. So we talked about how huge that is for SMU's offense to stay ahead of the chains and really how critical it was for our defense to pin their ears back and go. Syracuse was 2 for 5 on 4th down. So they get off the field a lot better than they have in weeks past. You stuff them on multiple 4th and shorts, including that goal line stop in the first quarter. But I think really the story of the defense for Saturday was the 3 interceptions. I mean, they came to play in the linebacking and secondary core because the Orange outgained the Mustangs from a yardage perspective, 379 to 370. I mean, 162 of those were given up in the fourth quarter as they got rolling late. You know, we're frankly all thinking about the ride home at that point. But you get the 2 sacks. You get the one by Turbo. You get the one by Terry Webb. And the defensive line has really just come alive the last couple of games. We're starting to see that defensive line unit that really settled in about this time last year, where who knows, maybe after the first 4 games where we were all kind of hitting the panic button of, okay, maybe they're going to settle in now at this point. And I know Syracuse had given up the most sacks in the ACC, but it just doesn't happen by rolling off the bus and deciding that you're going to get sacks. It's something that has to be developed and worked and add more rush moves and games, and they're adding more blitzes in. I mean, you can see this defense is starting to come together. I do still think that the deep passing defense is an issue for this team. Syracuse averaged 12.7 yards of completion. I just think there's a disconnect somewhere. It seems like there's too many times where a wide receiver is just turned loose, and maybe Jonathan McGill has a little more to add to that. But I don't know. We're just looking at these open gaps in coverage that you play a Sawyer Robertson or a Josh Hoover, who you expect to find those holes in coverage, but you bring up a backup quarterback who really looked terrible against Duke the week before, and he starts piecing us up. That's pretty concerning. And then I think tackling in space can always improve. You had 7 missed tackles by SMU. It's a lot better than it has been. It didn't bite you the same way that it did a couple weeks ago. But I was actually feeling an A- on this until the fourth quarter, so I'm going to go with a B+ for the defense.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And look, SMU's defensive style, 2 pieces here. One, because I want to address the secondary. SMU's defensive style has been and probably always will be bend but don't break. That's the approach. They want to limit explosives. We know, obviously, they did not do that against Baylor. That is a part of the reason why SMU lost that football game in dramatic fashion. But if you look at a Scott Simons defense, the last 2 years before that, they have been able to force teams to go the length of the field, 9, 10 play type of drives. Every now and again, you see a bad drive or whatever, but really consistently making a team go the full 75 or even go 8 plays to get into field goal range and then find a way to hold and get off the field and get a stop. And that's where we certainly saw that this week, for various different reasons, whether it be a fourth down stop, stuffing them that opening drive, whether that be getting off the field with interceptions and capitalizing on some poor throws. I mean, they could have had another 1 or 2 interceptions out there too. Zakai Barker almost had one that would have been probably a SportsCenter top 10 play. But
nice.
Yeah, it was close. It was close. And I was like, holy cow, like what hamstring injury. But he's just, I mean, he was in the right place, right time. Really would have been a nice play. But they just have kind of settled into that for the most part. This game, they forced Syracuse to go, the length. They didn't, until the fourth quarter, really, when they got a short field on an interception. There's this SMU defense just is maybe starting to find their way a little bit as far as limiting explosives and forcing teams to do that. Even TCU was able to, I mean, they, until those last two, they really were forcing them to go length of the field and earn every little bit of yardage. I felt like, at least. And so as far as the secondary, you make some changes. You get Ahmad Moses back there. You get Deuce Harmon on nickel. Isaiah Wacobia is certainly not played up to what the expectations were. I think he would say that if we talked to him, but they're still working some things out as far as communication goes, clearly, with some of the changes that led to a few busts, which, Stanford, SMU might be able to, allow that to happen again, but you don't want to. Clemson still has some all-world receivers that will make you pay. And Cade Klubnik showed why in Chapel Hill this past weekend when a bad team leaves options open. And that's where SMU is going to have to get that cleaned up ahead of that game against Death Valley or in Death Valley. But yeah, overall, I mean, I can't argue with that grade. It could have been worse at times. Ricky Collins is not a good quarterback, but they were able to generally keep everything at bay. So,
and I'm not trying to beat this like a drum, but it's just hard, and stats only tell part of the story. SMU is the worst passing defense in the country.
Yeah, exactly. There's no putting lipstick on a pig.
Yeah, where they're the worst passing defense in the country. They're the worst defense in the country as far as getting off the field. So they've had the most plays run against them through 5 games in college football, where it just became a point over the first 4 games of such a, how the hell do you stop these guys on third down and get our defense some rest? Where the Syracuse game, I think there was some improvement. But like you said, going into that Clemson game here in a couple of weeks, it's going to be really scary if we don't see some serious improvement and basically shut down a Stanford team this coming week.
Last thing on that, because I don't want to turn this into a Clemson preview, but the Clemson's offense is so one-dimensional right now. It's great that SMU is stopping the run. Teams have really not been able to run the ball very well on SMU for the most part. But if the secondary is what it is against Clemson and plays the way it has against some of the better teams, it's going to be scary. So they've got to figure it out.
Yeah. But another thing that was a little scary for me is special teams. I still think the kicking game just has some ways to go. So Wade McSparron has been so good so far this year, and then he shanks the opening punt, where it's just like, man, when we had such a good thing going for so long. He did bounce back. He did have a couple of nice punts after that. He had a over 50-yarder later in the game. But that was just a tough start, especially after we go 3 and out on offense, to give them that short field. And then you miss another field goal attempt. SMU is 3 for 9 on the year from field goal range, where it comes to the point of, when does Rhett Lashley start going for it on 4th and less than 5?
Yeah.
Because at this point, if you're going to walk away with nothing, you might as well get a 4th offensive snap out there. 100%. So you just have to get it under control. I think the coverage-wise, as far as the core 4, I think it was fine. I think Ymir did a nice job of fielding some tough punts again. It's a little scary. I always hold my breath when he seems to be running over his shoulder, but he's come down with it every time so far, knock on wood. He's been
awesome. He's been awesome.
Yeah, he's been great.
Yeah.
He had one return on 4 punts for 16 yards, and then we had only one kickoff return for 20 yards by Chris Johnson Jr. So I think just fair catches limited some of our opportunities in the return game this weekend. So we probably got beat by their punt and kickoff units. But I'm coming home with a C- for special teams. Wasn't as bad as it could have been, but really just those two, the shank and then the pushed right field goal attempt.
Yeah. I don't know what to do about kicking. And somehow the staff needs to figure out a way to build the confidence up in Sam Keltner and Colin Rogers and reopen this thing. I mean, I'm at that point, and that's not like, I think Sam, you can really tell, and I'm not saying like, I don't know. Sam Keltner, I feel like his kicks this season, they haven't been going in. So like ultimately it's a what have you done for me business. You can tell that dude is talented. Not that Colin isn't, but man, that kick from the one that doinked off the upright at TCU, that was like from 49, I think. That would have been good from like 65 yards. I mean, it was almost at the top of the upright. Like we watched it from the side. It was insane. He has plenty of leg and consistently has plenty of leg on his kicks. I don't feel like any of them have really been shanked. Like I feel like Colin has kicked some this year that are like, and that's kind of where we're at now, that it was just like so bad, especially relative to like him being a senior, preseason hype, all of that stuff, and the big kicks he has made, that you're like, okay, I don't know what's going on, but you got to figure it out and you got to go sit over there for a minute. And now you have two kickers that just aren't producing. And at the end of the day, you've got to produce. So
you're in a tough spot. I mean,
you're in a tough spot. Like, I don't know.
You're in a tough spot because I think Colin Rogers can only play in one more game before, or maybe it's two more, before he has to make a decision of, do you redshirt and try to go somewhere else, or do you ride this thing out the rest of the season and see what happens? And then Sam, on the other hand, if you bust him back down to the bench, where does his confidence go? Because kicking is such a, you swing that golf club on your leg, your level of activation before the game is, you are totally in your own world, where it really, while yes, you have to rely on the other 10, it is all you up to that point to go get those 3 points for the teams. So it's a tough spot for SMU and Rhett Lashley of what they're going to do going forward, but you got to walk away with points. Field goal is the only play in football that is designed to get points every time. So as hard as that is to say, offense is for yards, but in the NFL, that's what they talked about. The expectation is don't come back to the sideline if you don't get points.
Yeah. And I think Sam is the right guy, but it's also just like, I don't know. Something has to change. Kicks have to start really falling. Like the ones that they need to start falling. He kicked a short one. It was fine. To give them 3-0 lead. So it's not like he's not making them, but yeah. Anyway, what a departure from last year. But I can tell you what, when you depart for the game, you want to make sure your tickets are covered, and our friends at Game Time can hook you up with that. And look, this SMU Stanford game, great opportunity to find those zone deals, those cheapest seats, the super deals, the amazing deals. Game Time has you covered. And with their low price guarantee, they will credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets in the same section row for less somewhere else. So that's a huge deal. The purchase is covered with the most flexible service, customer service policy in the ticketing industry. And look, fees are included. That's the biggest deal here. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the lineup for this SMU Stanford game. You're going to be able to get some seats in the house and get them at a reasonable price. We're recording this on Tuesday. I'm sure the prices will go down. And look, they love pubbing this. You can get college football tickets as low as $25. You might even be able to get them cheaper at an SMU game this weekend for this Stanford one. But make sure you take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code ON3. That's ON, the number 3, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Create that account and redeem code ON3 for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. Hayden, The film room, a fan favorite for everybody. We've now started dropping these on the YouTube channel as well a couple days after. So make sure you obviously watch the podcast, but you can see them individually if you need to as well. But let's jump into it, shall we?
We shall. Bringing you guys 10 plays this week. Do have a nice even 5-5, so you're welcome for all my defensive lovers out there. But I think overall, this was one of our better weeks. I got some nice technique things to show you guys from an offensive line standpoint on, I think, the first third down, but have a lot of really good things on tape. A lot of really great individual efforts, I thought, this week. I think previous weeks we've been talking more about how the scheme is benefiting us. I think at this point in the season, Billy, is now when some of just the individual talents of these players are coming out. So big thanks to the SMU staff for letting me bring this to you guys yet again. And without further ado, enjoy the film room. All right, first third down of the game here. And this is disappointing because I think it set the tone for the run game for the rest of the day. While we do have a great offensive line unit from a talent perspective, I think Aaron Justice is one of the best in the country. But what I'm seeing here on this first third down was just a lack of technical presence about this offensive line. Just some uncharacteristic mistakes that they hadn't made so far this year. So I actually really like the front side between the left guard and the left tackle. This is going to end up being a single between the left guard and the center. It's tough for Logan because he's really not on his body. So all he can do is get that second step vertical and then climb. Savion does a good job of keeping him outside at left tackle. Watch Josh Bates here. So on his initial step, it's a little long, but it's not too bad as long as you bring your second step. But his second step never moves. So he gets a wide base. He has to kind of readjust. The D-line's pulling him a little bit. He's not really able to move him off of his spot. But again, that's okay as long as we get to this backside linebacker. But that doesn't happen. So let's watch the second step of Addison Nichols right here. First step is kind of your setup step. He does a good job with that. But his second step just completely steps around the defensive lineman. He needs that second step to go straight up the field, straight through this guy's crotch to set him up for PJ to run off the ball here and be able to drive this guy vertical. But the second step kind of screws everything up. Addison tries to play back into the defensive lineman more. He ends up knocking PJ off. So you don't end up blocking the down lineman or the backside linebacker. 3rd and 3, we get stuffed for no gain. Kevin's threat as a runner really opens up a lot of facets of our offense here. So this is going to be a run-pass option here on the backside. So while Savion looks to be turning to this backside guy, this is really a read here. So Kevin reads the guy. He crashes in. He's going to keep this ball. And look at the defensive backs over here around the numbers. So we're going to run this little bubble screen off of it. The DBs all collapse in, and that sets this up perfectly. You don't even have to block the guy at the point of attack because he commits so hard to Kevin being a running threat. So he just slings it out there. We do a nice job with RJ and Matthew Hibner of getting on the right guys, and this turns into almost a 20-yard gain on just a easy little bubble screen. So really nice job by the perimeter blocking, by KJ executing his job, and ensuring that his threat level is taken advantage of for us. So SMU posted this same play earlier on Tuesday with an angle that looked like it was from the Goodyear blimp, but I think this whip route run here by Ymir needs another look, as this is a really nice job. This is the next play after that KJ RPO. So we've got trips left over here, as with only 3 DBs, we're going to need to do something in order to kind of throw them off for a big gain like this. But Ymir does a nice job breaking to the inside, and look how quick he is. I mean, he's able to shut this down immediately and get going the other way. DB just guesses wrong as he has to work around the rub route at this point. Ymir is able to get the ball in space with about 4 or 5 yards of separation, just turns the corner and does enough to get in. But this is his specialty here. These little short routes, where he can show off his agility more than his top-end speed. He's got great hands, too, and we just do a really nice job. I think Kevin does a good job of knowing where the extra guy is, too, on the rush. TJ does a decent job trying to go over there, get a piece of him. Kevin buys enough time and is just able to dump it off to Ymir for a touchdown for the Mustangs. So early in the season, we were talking about why hadn't we gotten the tight ends more involved with this offense, and I think Saturday was really the breakout game for that unit. So we start here in this bunch set. We've got 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, 1 running back, and KJ is going to send everybody in motion, kind of get everybody more split out wide, get us into more of a almost 10 personnel formation, but with still our 2 tight ends split out wide as receivers. So on the snap, we got a little sprint out protection here. So You watch PJ as the right tackle. He's really keeping that guy inside to ensure that Kevin can get outside of all this trash here. And when he rolls out, I loved watching this from RJ Maryland. Coming back from his injury, you hadn't really seen him at full force. And I mean, watch this catch right here. He's jumping off of the knee that has the brace on it. So if there's any doubt that he's heading in the right direction, I mean, just look at this right here. Gets full extended here, goes up, gets the rebound. I mean, jumping off of that leg for a crazy catch and toe tap. I mean, I think he even gets both in right here. But definitely one. The sideline knows it. Just welcome back, RJ. I think this is the first time we've seen him kind of at full force this season, and it's good to have him back. So not to be outdone by RJ Maryland, now Matthew Hipner is going to get his shot. So got 11 personnel here, tight end and the running back on the right side, and all that Hibby's going to do here is he's just going to run up this hash and kind of take the top off the defense. But look at this ball and this catch here. So Kevin does a nice job putting the ball up where only Matthew Hibner can get to it, but he's full extension here. I mean, from a full sprint to full extension, I mean, this is a great job by Hibby going up and getting this. This is probably the catch of the year so far for this team, but really nice job passing off the protections up front, do a nice job keeping KJ clean enough for long enough, and is just able to deliver a dime out here to Hibner. So glad to have both of the tight ends in action this week. Thought they both had really, really strong performances. So I think the defensive line has improved overall every week, as well as I think the defense has just shown improvement as each game has passed. So here, early in the game, first quarter, they made a hell of a goal line stand here. So they had first and goal from the 7 here, and they stopped them twice from the 1. So here on the snap, I mean, you've got all kinds of bodies in there. This is football at its purest form. You got all 11 here in about a 10-yard box. So 22 bodies here as unstoppable force by formation tries to meet an unmovable object. So I think Syracuse has, let's see, they've got 8 on the line of scrimmage here, quarterback, and they've got 2 guys behind to try to push them in like the tush push. But really the guy that makes this go here is Jeffrey Emba over here on the right side. So does a nice job timing the snap here. He gets low. He gets underneath this guard where this guard gets no movement here, which allows the linebackers to step up, jump over the pile. You see a couple of those guys, Alex Kilgore, Ahmad Moses, are kind of jumping up here to make the stop. Syracuse is trying to go over the top, but our D-line does a good enough job making a pile, getting some penetration here, and just letting the linebackers do the rest of the work. So great job. I think this is a morale booster for the defense going forward. They had some nice fourth down stops in this game. This one was on third down, but overall, just I think they're improving every week. I think they're showing some capabilities. I think they're getting back to form a little bit. But overall, as long as we keep seeing this improvement, I think we'll be in good shape. So Brandon Miazono had a really nice camp, a really nice showing early in the season where I thought he might end up being the starter, but has really stepped into his role as a reserve guy. He's made some good plays, but this has been his best so far this year. So we got our 4 down front here. So I believe it's second down here. But we do a nice job of getting some initial push up front, but it is more of a quick hitting play. So Syracuse drops back, and they're really going to throw this into triple coverage. But I think it was just because of Miazono falling off on this play. He really looks like he's got this tight end man. So he runs out there, but he's kind of looking through him at the quarterback's eyes. Quarterback's staring down this receiver the entire way, and Miazono just steps in front of it. Gets us going back in the red zone. Club takeaways back open. So really nice job to Brandon. I think he's stepped up. I think he knows his role, but he's also done a good job of just making the best of a situation here. So been one of our better players defensively. He's graded out well every week, but he just keeps making plays for us. So we'll need it going forward the rest of the season as Brandon Miazono has stepped up for us in a big way. So we highlighted an individual effort by Miazono a couple plays ago, and now we're just going to highlight Terry Webb here. So the right D tackle, when you're looking at the defense from behind, this backside guard really has a lock on him, so his main job is just to block him one-on-one. He's got to keep him outside, so he steps inside first. He's a little out of control, and Terry senses this, man. He's able to read this, get a really nice arm over. The O-lineman almost falls down. The most impressive part of this, though, is the acceleration by Terry out of his break. So he gets past the O-lineman here, and he's able to accelerate through this tackle, where instead of them falling forward for a couple yards, I think this just ended up being a no gain or at worst a 1-yard gain. So looking at 2nd and 9 now because of a really great play by one guy who makes the other 10 right. Got another really great individual play coming up here by Turbo here on the left side, the D end. So on the snap, he's going to charge the mesh as they coach it. So they've got a little bit of a zone read on here. They're really reading the backside. But either way, he's got a puller coming his direction. So does a nice job bending around the corner. I mean, look how low he is to the ground here, getting underneath that offensive lineman and just doing enough to trip up the running back here in the backfield. I mean, this takes a lot of bend. It takes a lot of athleticism to be able to do something like this. Turbo has come on, man. He's been one of the guys where early in the season I was a little skeptical, but has really turned it on once we've kind of hit the last couple of games. So could be an all-ACC season in the making for Turbo. I think he's the 3rd or 4th highest graded defensive end at this point in the season, but has done a really nice job for us. He's kind of waited his turn behind Elijah, has been more of a reserve player, but he keeps making plays like this, man. He's going to be a special player. I think Smoke catches a lot of criticism at corner. It's a really tough position to play. He's gotten in some tough situations earlier this year, but plays like this is what makes up for it. So he's over here at the top of the screen, bottom of the numbers here, and he's got this wide receiver. They're in a zone coverage, but he does let him go as he runs by him, and that does a nice job of accelerating and running through this tackle. One thing I would like to see is I would like to see him get his eyes up, as we did have a couple of broken tackles that cost us that game against TCU. I hate to keep bringing it up, but when you see stuff like this on tape, which is such a great play, but ultimately it could just be that much better if he keeps his eyes up, is able to see what he's hitting. But either way, does a great job tackling in space, and this is hard to do. So great job, Smoke, kind of bouncing back from some things earlier in the season and coming up with a big play for us.
Great stuff, Hayden. I know that is time intensive to get that all figured out, but you do great work with it, and I know everybody on the pod appreciates it. And I can tell you what, you want to just sit back in the film room and relax a little bit? Best way to do it with our friends at Socorro. This is the Añejo. Beautiful, beautiful bottle. We had some of this out on the boulevard, and we've been sampling it with some of our friends that have not been introduced to Socorro, and it is fantastic. And some people were mixing up ranch waters. We had some people mixing up just tequila and club soda, tequila water, doing some tequila lime, even drinking it just on the rocks or neat, even not on the boulevard. Some people were talking about how they drink it on neat at home post game for the hardcore tequila lovers. But Socorro is just this incredibly clean tequila that we love, that we've been able to partner with. This is a bold tequila brand that has really taken the whole world by storm. They've won multiple awards in the last couple of years, big ones, whether it be the Blanco earning double gold, or the Reposado earning a gold, or the Añejo earning a silver. This is all stuff that I've been toying around with, making cocktails for Michelle and I just lately since we've partnered with them, and really have had a lot of fun exploring different ways to make some margaritas, or make a little just tequila, lime juice, water. I mean, just really fresh. And so we appreciate our friends at Socorro for supporting us. And make sure you grab it at your local liquor store, or whether you're at Manny's or some other restaurant, ask for it when you get your margarita, ranch water, or whatever cocktail you'd like. So our friends at Socorro continue to hook us up, and we look forward to many, many more partnerships and events with them by our side and in our glass. So.
Well, Billy, while you're continuing to mix it up behind the bar, I'm going to keep this one pretty straightforward. We got our MVPs. We are back after a win for this SMU football team. This one, you can see it coming from a long time away. He's actually earning his first on the year. I got to give it to KJ. 16 straight completions in the middle of this game. Career high, 4 touchdowns at home in front of the home crowd. He did take that 1 sack, but I think overall in this game, he did a good job escaping the pocket when necessary. He slid a couple times in this game to protect himself, which is something I think everybody in my section pretty much screams when he leaves the pocket. But just his legs are such a threat in this conference to bring DBs in, like that play I just showed in the film room where guys overly commit and he's able to just dump it out there, where you essentially eliminate and block a couple of guys by just showing that potential run threat. So great job, KJ. We wouldn't be in this position without you. So congrats on my MVP.
I'm going to pick the defensive side of the ball here. I'm going to go with Isaiah Smith because, one, I feel like he could have gotten a couple of more sacks, and Rhett lost his voice over one of the holds that I think everybody could see. And it was a big play. I think that was one of the plays that Ricky Collins scrambled in the fourth quarter, and they ended up scoring off that drive. It was a big gain for them. But Isaiah Smith did have a sack. He had two other pressures. He had two other two other pressures, two other hits on Ricky Collins. He had 3 tackles total, was in on another one. Just a really, really nice game for Isaiah Smith, somebody who I think, man, if you're SMU, you need him to elevate here down the stretch because, Dean Rawlsky said it on the post-game show. We've kind of, just accepted this as a talking point at this point for SMU, but it doesn't matter how anymore. Like, you're not getting into the college football playoff by winning all these games over the ACC, 31-3 or any of that. Like, doesn't matter. You lost to Baylor and TCU. So to do that, Isaiah Smith, whatever has happened in the first 5 games of the season now, you've got to put behind you and continue to play like you did against Syracuse and put that together and rush the passer and get after them because SMU needs help from this defensive line and its pass rushers to get after the quarterback, get those sacks, get those pressures, and help out this secondary that desperately needs plays like Isaiah Smith had on Saturday.
I love the pick. I mean, they're coming out this week, and it was the same service that ranked the offensive line tied for 5th. I think Turbo is 3rd as far as pressures in the ACC. So something where blink if you miss it after the first few games of the year, but he's starting to come along as well as he's stepping out of kind of Elijah's shadow after last year where this is his show. He's able to just go and take it. So I love the pick, man. So
thanks. I appreciate that. Look, I love this weekend of college football. And part of it is I think 2:30 is the best time because selfishly, you get done with that 2:30 game and then, wife's asleep, kids asleep. Like, it's college football recap show. It's watching the late games. It's all of those things. It's just perfect. And that Florida State-Miami game delivered Saturday night.
No doubt, man. One of the most anticipated ACC games of the year after the start that Florida State has had. So they square off for an in-state rivalry, huge early season implications that I think nobody saw coming after how the year ended last year for these teams. But number 3, Miami hit the road to Tallahassee to take on number 18, Florida State. And this game looked to be kind of a blowout for a while. I mean, it was 28-3 Miami at the end of the 3rd quarter, and then Florida State rips off 19 unanswered, where you're like, okay, is this going to be one of those classic Florida State-Miami finishes? But the game was closer than it felt for the first 45 minutes. Carson Beck, he's been unreal this first half of the year. Threw 4 touchdowns, no picks, 74% completion rate. Miami has now beaten South Florida, Florida Gators, and Florida State. So proves they run the state of Florida this year. But Billy, I just don't know what to think about Miami. It just seems like from their offensive line, from their skill position to their defense, I mean, they are legit number 1 in the country potential when they come to Ford Stadium in November.
And here's the thing about Miami too, that Malachi Toney, freshman stud, just absolute beast, was the true freshman of the week for us at On 3. He's a problem. Like, he's a major problem. He's probably the best receiver SMU is going to face all year. And I say that with CJ Daniels being on Miami's roster. I say that with all respect to what Clemson has at the wide receiver position as well. But that dude is a problem for all the reasons that we have seen through the SMU secondary. But with Miami, you look at just how steady Carson Beck is, and that is where for SMU, there's so many things that need to change still by the time that game comes around. The way Miami is playing right now, I don't want to say it like this, but okay, what's next for them? Like, what do they have to do that? I mean, you want to talk about not finishing? They're probably a little like, oh, really? Like, you're up big, and you end up having a close game against Florida State. I mean, that's what you expect in college football, though. Here's their next up. They, I believe, they are on a bye this week, and then they play Louisville at home. So decent matchup. I'm not particularly high on Miller Moss and what he brings for the Cardinals. So let's just say they win that one. Then they host Stanford. I think they'll win that one for sure. And then they head to SMU. So over these next 2 weeks, after this bye, what is Miami going to do? How are they going to spend their bye week? Is Louisville going to be able to shock them? Because Louisville's talented, at least. They just haven't put it all together.
Yeah.
So that's my question is, are they rolling into SMU undefeated? If they are, I think I'd rather, if you're an SMU fan, them be undefeated, not because they'd be number 1 or number 2 or whatever, but you'd rather them not have faced you want them to face the least amount of adversity.
Yeah. And besides that Notre Dame game early in the year, I don't really feel like they've faced any at all. I mean,
and that Notre Dame game wasn't like, I mean, it was pouring. It was this, it was that. Like, I watched that game almost start to finish, and I was like, God, Notre Dame looked brutal.
Yeah, no, that's a great point too, and it kind of fell into Miami's hands with that great O-line that they have, and
Yep.
They just kind of had it all put together for that game. So I agree with you. I think the best thing for SMU is for Miami to kind of be riding that high, and for, frankly, us to be able to kick them down a peg, because you don't learn as much in a win as you do in a loss. So that would be best case scenario for us to be able to hopefully sneak up on them. I think SMU is going to be able to keeping this upward trajectory to where could be upset potential by the time that rolls around. But
yeah,
talking about upsets.
Sorry, last point. SMU scores points at home. I mean, they do. This game, Syracuse, kind of weird, but I mean, they score points at home. I mean, it's crazy. I think outside of that BYU game, has SMU scored under 30?
It's been a while
in the last however long at home, and it really hasn't been. I don't think it's been close either. So
when you think about all the super high scoring games, the Baylor game, the Houston game, all these basketball scores have all come at Ford Stadium. So I don't know what that means for the defense, but offensively.
Speaking of a basketball school,
upset of the year. I don't know whether to call this upset of the year or whether I should call this an expected result, but winless UCLA knocks off number 7 Penn State at the Rose Bowl. I mean, you can't let one loss become 2, as it looked like Oregon has now beat Penn State 2 weeks in a row. James Franklin, I listened to his post-game press conference. He blamed the travel. He said they didn't start with the right energy. Hey, Coach, I hate to break it to you. That's on you to set the expectation.
Jerry Neuheisel had 2 days to prepare a game plan for this one.
Like, come on. Not to mention Oregon had to travel to Penn State. Did you hear them complain about the travel? No. I don't think so. But
James Franklin and Steve Sarkisian this week are on there like, let me say some most outrageous things when I have the most resources in college football to win.
It's insane, man. And I, at this point, I'm a hater, of just what Penn State has done less with more. But UCLA quarterback Nico Iamaleava, he only threw for 166, but he rushed for 128, to where, the passing defense was on, but you let UCLA just dominate you in the trenches. They ran the clock on them, and Penn State was down big, and next thing they knew, they're in a dogfight. Penn State's 0-2, first time since 2020 in Big Ten play, and James Franklin, are you an Arkansas Razorback?
Look, I think it would be a great hire. I still think he's a good coach, but like, you can't like do this.
Yeah.
I mean, UCLA is a great story that they did it, but and I think, and not to tie this all back to SMU, but man, when you lose a football game, how do you avoid it really hurting you at the next turning point? I think SMU is good at that, getting over that. And, they easily could have let Syracuse, do what they want, had a bye week. You were chilling. You lost TCU. The hurt of that doesn't necessarily wear off, but it, could have. They got off the mat and they were able to figure it out. And, you look ahead later this year when they play Miami, they're going to have a bye week actually, I take it back. They're going to play Miami, and then they're going to go on the road and go to Boston College.
Yep.
So if SMU loses to Miami, how do they battle back from that with a BC team that looked horrible this year? Boat raced on Saturday, but I don't know. College football is, I remember Steve Sarkisian saying something 2 summers ago now about how hard it is to recruit kids from Texas high school footballs, and you want to take them all, and it's just so hard. Life's so hard. Life really comes at you fast because it is difficult right now to see this Texas football team kind of getting out of this hole that they're in following another loss.
Preseason number 1 and number 2 are unranked. Texas
I had them fifth. I had Texas 5th in my preseason ballot for the SEC. Yay me!
I thought you were going to say the nation. I was like, okay, I don't know.
Even that would have been an outlier. I feel like,
yeah. But man, Billy Napier and DJ Lagway, when their backs against the wall, they are tough to beat. Man, they put together a great game plan. Florida Gators kind of just had their way with Texas. Texas rolled into Gainesville, still flying high. They're at number 9. They hadn't played overly well. Even in the pregame shows, they were talking about how poor they are up front offensively. Arch Manning doesn't have any help. And I'm not trying to make excuses for Arch, but DJ Lagway was just on a different planet compared to him. I mean, he throws for a season best 289, 2 touchdowns. They're both true freshman wide receiver, Dallas Wilson, while Arch was just beaten up all afternoon. I mean, he was hurried left and right. And Texas's offensive line, for a school that typically produces really good offensive line and has a ton of guys in the NFL, it's shocking to see how bad they are in the trenches. I mean, even Sark kind of threw them under the bus a little bit and talked about how bad they were in the postgame, which I don't know if I'd want to block for my head coach very hard if he's talking about me like that to the national media. But Sark, you're going to make this bed, and eventually you're going to have to lay in it.
Well, here's the thing, too, and Texas's offensive line, when you look at it now and how they've recruited it, they've had like a splash guy here and there. They're still, they haven't really pieced that together. But, man, this reminds me of the Texas offensive lines at like the end of the Mac Brown era. I mean, just guys that were recruited early, some other pieces that were added. Of course, Texas has gone a little bit more national under Steve Sarkisian, but like it just seems like they're lazy evals. Like, hey, here's a guy that you're supposed to recruit because he's got a bunch of offers. And by the way, Texas is striking out on the big time guys. Michael Fasusi's at Oklahoma. I mean, they couple of guys at A&M that Texas was after. LSU gets Weston Davis out of there, and Weston's having his own issues at right tackle for LSU, but still 5-star in your state. And this is what you get. Like this is what it looks like. And another thing that isn't being talked enough about is how long this offensive line is having to block for these receivers that are slow. They are a slow receiver core. And I don't care how well Parker Livingstone is playing for his opportunities. Ryan Wingo's slow. This is a wide receiver core that is nothing like they had the 2 previous seasons.
It's hard to see. Texas comes away with the top recruiting classes. I mean, what seems like every year, top 10 at least. But just the misses, and I've seen this from my perspective, being a guy that was a 3-star. I wasn't a big time recruit, and that's fine. I mean, I ended up at the place I was supposed to be. But you look at some of the guys that end up at these blue chip programs, and you're like, how is this kid getting recruited beside his height and weight?
And sometimes the weight is like flashing like red flag, like 350 pounds. Do not recruit. Like there are only like Cam Williams is probably out of Duncanville the only offensive lineman. I don't even know if he got drafted like late. Did he end up getting drafted? But like rare that a 350 pounder should ever be taken at. Like you have to really verify how freaky of an athlete they are. Yeah. Like Evan Neal, going ended up at Bama.
Yeah, you got to be 6'9" or 6'10" to even make it look remotely athletic. Other than that, you're just a big slob.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good night. But
Well,
Want to get to the
I could
quick
tell.
hitters?
I could tell you that Texas could really use a franchise offensive lineman like they had with Kelvin Banks, and you guys can get your own franchise when you reach out to our friend Andy Ludicky at My Perfect Franchise. MyPerfectFranchise.net is where you can reach him. You can see all of the different success stories he's got. He can walk you through the process of getting into the franchise world, and it all starts with that phone call. 404-973-9901. Reach out to Andy Ludicky today. He'll walk you through his process. He's been a franchise consultant forever, and his services are free, which is the best part. So when you contact him, get in touch with him, and figure out what next steps you want to use in terms of getting into the franchise ownership world, he can walk you through it, then assist you and get you into that. So 404-973-9901, or email him, Andy, ANDY, at myperfectfranchise.net. Finally,
Some
last couple quick hitters here.
Before we go, Virginia's second upset in a row. They do beat the Louisville Cardinals. Cavs win 30-27 in overtime. This Cavs offense is pretty good. I think it's going to be a different team than Billy, you and I saw in person last year, as Chandler Morris, like I said last week, I think he's just found a home that works for him. But also, the first leg of the Commander-in-Chief Trophy was played this past weekend. Navy ends up beating Air Force 34-31 in Annapolis. Midshipmen are 5-0 at this time. So could end up being one of those years where Navy just kind of puts it all together. And who knows, maybe we see an academy in the playoff. I do want to put a reminder out there, as even I had to be reminded of this. College football playoff, the auto bids are only top 5 conference champions. It's not a specific group of 5 representative, even though at this point it might as well be. But it's not guaranteed to be a American Conference team. You could theoretically, maybe not this year, end up with a Washington State or Oregon State in the new Pac-12. But speaking of Pac-12, Texas State, they're joining the Pac-12 next year, but they fall to Arkansas State in Jonesboro, missed extra point in the final minute of the game. Red Wolves drove the field, down 1, scored the game-winning down 6, scored the game-winning touchdown, kicked the game-winning extra point with 6 seconds remaining. Love G.J. Kinney, but Texas State's 3-2 and 0-1 in Sun Belt play. And then finally, I want to give a shout-out to the job that Ryan Silverfield has done at Memphis, keeping that program relevant throughout kind of the ever-changing landscape of college football. Memphis becomes the first 6-0 team in the country. They win 45-7 over the Tulsa Golden Hurricanes. So congrats to Memphis. I know they were our rivals, but they've done a great job with that program. And I think they're the ones that are going to get left behind. They're pouring a lot of money into the Liberty Bowl. They're doing everything they can to stay relevant, but for whatever reason, they're going to be stuck in that in-between until further notice. Yeah,
it's and Ryan Silverfield, to your point, talked about what they need. They need help. They need this. They need that last year. And, he's put it together. He's kind of backed up his talking points around NIL and the sport he needs. So kudos to them. And Memphis, there's no reason why they shouldn't be right there every single year. So with that, we are wrapping up this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast, breaking down the Syracuse game and coast to coast around college football following week 6. I'm Billy Embody. That is Hayden Howerton. We will catch you guys next time on another edition as we preview SMU Stanford, 11 a.m. Central in Ford Stadium on Saturday as the Mustangs look to go to 2-0 in ACC play and set up a big game in Death Valley. We'll talk about all that and more next time on the Pony Express podcast. Thanks for listening. Catch you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU_on3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.